Honestly, I don't think anybody can tell the story of these wars better than those who are right there on the front lines experiencing it every day. My name is Andrew Carroll, and I'm the founder of something called the Legacy Project, which is an effort started 15 years ago to encourage Americans to save their war letters. And thanks to Dear Abby, the columnist, who did an article about it, and some other media, the word spread throughout the country, and veterans and their families started sending us literally thousands, tens of thousands of war letters from every conflict in our nation's history. We now have about 100,000 wartime correspondences, from handwritten missives going back to the American Revolution up to emails from Iraq and Afghanistan. We're going to do online exhibits and catalog them and digitize them and make them accessible for people all over the world and for scholars and just the general public, really to give people a better understanding of what our troops and their families go through. And we very much include letters from the home front, because the spouses and the parents and the siblings and the children, they go through these conflicts as well. And so it's really a way of memorializing the people who've served this country and their loved ones. So this is the letter that in many ways helped inspire the project. This was written by a distant cousin of mine. It's dated April 21st, 1945. He's writing, "Dear Betty Ann, I saw something today that makes me realize why we're over here fighting this war. We visited a German political internment camp. It was Buchenwald." So in 3 pages, he describes in very graphic detail what he saw at Buchenwald just after it was liberated. And so my cousin sent me this letter, and I said, Jim, this is incredible, and I'll mail it back to you. And he said, just keep it. I was probably going to throw it out anyway. And it just seemed to me incredible that we would have lost this piece of history. This visually is one of our most extraordinary letters. This is also from World War II, by a soldier who was in Anzio. And he wrote a letter to a friend, he put the letter in his backpack, and it was shot right through. And fortunately he survived, but you can obviously see the damage done to the letters. This again is probably one of the most historic letters in our collection. This is the one that was written on Adolf Hitler's private personal stationery. This is the actual paper. And this young service member, Horace Evers, wrote home to his parents about the horrors of the Dachau concentration camp. And there's an interesting line in here where he says, we had heard these stories about the concentration camps, but quite frankly, we thought they were propaganda. Now that he's seen it for himself, he's like, it's actually worse than what you've been hearing back in the States. And again, this letter is just, to hold this in your hands, knowing that it was, coming off of the desk in Munich in 1945 is just really chilling. This letter is also very historic. At the end of World War II, Hideki Tojo, the ex-premier of Japan, tried to kill himself. He put a gun to his chest, but he missed his heart, and he was revived by American MPs and doctors. This young medic was writing home to his parents, and he begins, "Dear Mom and Dad, I don't imagine you could ever guess where I am as I write this letter. At present, I'm sitting in a chair about 3 feet from the bedside of the ex-premier of Japan, Hideki Tojo." And so this young medic was tasked with keeping Tojo alive, and we eventually revived him, and he was then executed for war crimes. And this letter was bought at a yard sale for like 50 cents, then someone sent it to us. And it's interesting, in the PS he says, in my next letter, I'll send a piece of Tojo's shirt. It has blood on it, but don't wash it. Just put it away with my things. This is one of the letters by a service member who was writing to a friend back in the States. He's in Vietnam, and he talks about how this is my own very selfish, compulsive interest right now, survival. And he's only been in Vietnam for a month. He wants to get through the 11 months to come. And he talks about, when somebody shoots at me, I take it personally. It's a weird experience, to be continued. He was killed later that day. So this is the last letter he wrote before he died. This is a case where the young soldier, and this is a picture of him right here, Tommy Kennedy, with his mom, and here are all of his sisters. He kept this photograph on him. He was captured at Corregidor, and after 3 years he knew he wasn't going to survive. And on the back of the letter he wrote his final words home to his parents. And these were smuggled back, from POW to POW until it eventually got to his parents almost a year after the war. This next letter is from Desert Storm, and what's amazing about it is it's written in the midst of a Scud attack. And what is also amazing is that the woman who wrote it was a grandmother at the time. Her name was Sandy Mitten, and she was writing this letter home, and in the middle of it, she said, "If I ever had any doubts about weather," and it just cuts off, "next PM." Back again, in the middle of that sentence, we had a Scud missile attack. So it just gives you a sense of what it was like to be right there on the front lines, and by a woman. She was with the Navy, manning a 50 caliber machine gun, and just what she was going through. But just it's interesting the fact that she was a grandmother when she wrote this. So it just gives you a sense of the scope of the collection, and how many different wars this covers, the types of letters from these different engagements, and that this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are just literally millions of letters still out there, tucked away in basements and closets and attics, and we're hoping that people will share as many of their letters as they would like to, and we want to preserve them for posterity.